A good Friday morning to you, Real Talkers. I know if you're tuning in live, if you're one of the hardcores, the Real Talkers that's tuning in live right now, if you were checking your clock and you're like, this guy's like 30 seconds behind where he's normally at. There's like 30 seconds, not late. We don't prefer the term late here. But about 30 seconds behind where you'd like to ideally be. This is the language. This is the perspective of someone who's typically late for everything. This is how our minds operate. Not late. There's qualifiers like fashionably late, for example, that we can adopt. But I'm very excited because I needed 30 extra seconds, and it appears as though it has not worked. Never mind. Damn it! I was so excited to make an announcement. I was going to show you guys my phone. Everybody that's watching here on YouTube, it has a hard time under the studio lights, doesn't it? There we go. I wanted to show you my Instagram because I got something really exciting yesterday. I was granted an opportunity, but I blew it because I don't know what I'm doing. But I can now include on my Instagram stories. If you follow me on Instagram, thank you. A few of you finally pushed me over 10,000 followers the other day, which was really exciting. Not just because I get to come on Real Talk and sort of like casually drop like 10,000 followers, because I know that there are people that are friends of this program that have like 100,000 followers or 250,000 followers, so they don't care about 10,000. But the reason that 10,000 is significant is because it gives me the option to include the swipe up on my Instagram story, right?
Sorry. Thank you for clarifying. I needed the clarification.
And so I was really excited because I do like a moderately decent job of I do a very good job on Twitter of letting everybody know who's going to be on the show, and then I kind of like cop out and just screen grab my tweet and post it on Instagram story. It's kind of like a half-assed way. Like we don't have the horsepower. We don't have the, what's the word I'm looking for? The bandwidth on the team
yet.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Not yet. We don't yet have our dedicated digital producer who's going to be able to go ahead and do all these things for me and basically take my phone over and do all these like awesome things. And you see, I don't know the phrases to use. I don't even know the terms.
But you're kind of like on trend in that a lot of people are just basically taking stuff from Twitter, posting it on Instagram, and vice versa,
and social
then
media
TikTok,
experts,
and like
they say don't ever do that.
Well, no, but now people are kind of like,
yeah,
and it's happening.
Well, it's because it's like, what would be an example? What would be a good example? I'm trying to think. You gardening. If you decided, and maybe this is a bad example, I'm probably going to get halfway through the metaphor and then realize and realize that it's a terrible one, which wouldn't be anything new. But if you decided that you were going to have a dedicated rock garden and then you were also going to have a vegetable garden, you know what's a better one? Fish tanks. If you decided that you were going to have like fish bowls, saltwater fish tanks, freshwater fish tanks, all these different types and species of, I was going to say brands of fish, species, which just, by the way, goes to show my subconscious of how we treat fish different than other animals on planet Earth. This goes back to our ethics of eating. Nobody cares about fish. People care about dolphins. They care about whales. They don't care about fish.
Well, dolphins, aren't they actually mammals?
Live births.
Yeah.
That's right. Whales too.
Yeah, so.
Yeah. So it just goes to show.
Yeah.
Nobody cares about fish. But what I find is like in bringing this back loosely to social media, if you try to be a jack of all trades, for example, if whether it was your gardening or your fish tanks or whatever you were trying to do, it's the same sort of a thing as someone like me who currently has about 7 books on the go. I'm reading about 7 different books, which means that honestly, I'm reading none of them because I'm jumping around back and forth, and I got to go back and read the chapter again, and I don't remember what's going on, and I've had a few scotches half the time, and I don't even remember what the book's about. You know what I mean? And so you're like, okay, well, I want to be really good on Instagram, or I want to be really effective on Twitter, or I want to make sure that I squeeze the most out of LinkedIn or TikTok or whatever. All the other ones that I can't even remember. Snapchat. Do people still use Snapchat? Probably.
No, not really.
No, it's not a thing anymore?
Well, I mean, it's
Or are
there.
we just old?
No, it's there, but I feel like TikTok is kind of shoved the
Yeah.
Snapchat a little further to the.
Which makes you wonder then, what about all the people that worked so hard to build a big Snapchat following? Like, and it just disappears, right? So social media, so the point of all this is well, the first point is that there's no point. And then if there were to be one, it would be that social media managers, which is a real job, it's an important job. These folks are like, I mean, they can take businesses' performance, sort of, and skyrocket it. They can, identify where a business could really gain some ground and blah, 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 blah. And it's kind of this emerging profession, and they do a really smart job. And they will say, don't ever just take your Instagram post and don't take your Twitter, your tweet and put it on Instagram. Don't take your Instagram post and just put it on Facebook. It's just not how it works, and it's not effective, and people sniff it out from a mile away.
Yeah, I mean, there's different language and different, with hashtags, it's kind of like poo-poo to put a hashtag on Facebook. And although LinkedIn says, yes, definitely use a hashtag, who actually does that? But what I've been seeing a lot of lately is that people will do screen grabs of tweets and then put them over on their Instagram stories.
Yeah.
So it's like, those rules? Now we're going to throw those rules out.
Yeah, so I have no idea what I'm doing, but all of this to say, and kudos to me, really, because it only took me 7 minutes to make a point arguably not even worth making. What this really is trying to drive people to my Instagram and my Twitter. I'm so subtle. It's amazing. I tried to give you all today the swipe up. I was so excited to say, here's who's on the show. Swipe up to tune into Real Talk. And I blew it big time. It's not working. And I also see that so far, well, actually, a whole bunch of people are checking it out now, which is great. So it's working. But maybe someone can school me. I mean, my wife is amazing at this. She can teach me how to do it. I thought I did it. I blew it. While you're on my Insta story, check it out. I have a video of the brand new Jeep Wrangler 4xe at St. Albert Dodge. It's the one that I checked out and test drove yesterday, plus a couple photos of those Dodge Demons they have in there at 840 horsepower. I was talking to a buddy. I said, hey, man, I was talking to him on the phone after I swung by St. Albert Dodge, and I said, are you familiar? He's a car guy. I go, are you familiar with the Dodge Demon? And when you ask somebody, like, whether it's like a real, like a music snob, like a hipster, and if you were to say something like, have you ever heard of like The Weeknd or like Vampire Weekend or like something? And they'd be rolling their eyes so hard they'd be giving themselves a migraine, and they'd be like, yeah. And then they'd be like, what, like 9 years ago? They'd probably something like that. So my buddy, I go, have you ever heard of the Dodge Demon? He goes, yeah. I'm like, 840 horsepower. He goes, yeah. And 10 grand for tires. 10 grand for tires every 2 weeks. I'm like, well, yeah. I mean, that's not an official. I think he's just saying if he were to own an 840 horsepower Mopar machine, he'd be ripping through tires like nobody's business.
Yeah, tires would not last long.
Not the official position of Relay Communications or Real Talk. We recommend, we insist that everyone follow all posted speed limits at all times. We're going to be talking about crypto coming up in a little bit. And we're going to be getting into my basic question is Elon Musk the puppet master of cryptocurrency? Is this what it's going to be? And we've got some great emails from folks when we told you that we were going to be talking to Vishesh Raisinghani, a financial marketer, and Adam O'Brien, the president, the founding CEO of Bitcoin. Well, about this, we started getting emails from people that were like, hey, if you're going to be talking crypto, can you please ask this? We love these types of emails. So we're going to be getting into some of those, and they come from varying positions, obviously, people at different sort of levels of awareness. And then our roundtable today, our Real Talk roundtable, is going to be a great one, talking about barriers in sport. So we're going to talk to the founder of Tigers Skate Club, which is a really neat initiative, a skateboarding club that's all for women and girls. And, well, Sarah, as if I'm going to sit here and pretend like you're not a member of Tigers Skate Club, instead of me explaining what it's all about with the person who participates 4 feet away, Tigers Skate Club is all about...
Well, it's really about just inviting everyone to come and hang out and to learn skateboarding. I mean, during the pandemic, you want to get outside, and I always want to learn new things. So I tried out skateboarding for the first time, and they invite folks of all ages And I gotta also admit, like in junior high, when all the guys, all the guys were skateboarding, I just kind of hung out on the edge because I was like, I can't do that.
But you wanted to.
Oh, 100%. 100%. And so, just during the pandemic, I was like, okay, that's it. I'm not going to hang out on the sideline anymore. I'm going to go in. And then I found out about Tiger Skate Club, who are, it's led by women and non-binary folks. And we're just like, I am so novice. So novice.
Do you at least get to do cool things like when you were like learning skateboarding back in the day that would be part of the deal? Like do people sort of bring in like cigarettes they stole from their dad and everybody passes them around, but they're like the like old ones, the dry ones that they found in the garage.
Menthol.
They found the menthol. I didn't say you stole from grandma. I said
that's what ended up happening when I was in junior high. They were like, guys, I got some cigarettes.
You want to know a story that nobody's been reporting that I would love to do a deep dive on. We need to, I mean, this would be like a journalist. You'd have to disappear for a few days. You'd have to go undercover.
Right.
We'd have to come up with a budget, which would be no problem for you to travel around the province because you'd be road tripping to small communities. When the federal government under Stephen Harper outlawed things like flavored rolling papers and flavored sort of novelty cigars and things like that, and most notably, I think menthol cigarettes, right? Because they were saying these are marketed to kids, these are for kids, and everyone was laughing, going, they're for grandmothers. Menthol cigarettes, the largest demographic. If you were to sell menthol cigarettes in a casino exclusively to grandmothers, you would be able to buy whatever you wanted for the rest of your life. Your financial security would be unparalleled.
Do you have the data to back this up?
No. I'm a talk show host, not a scientist.
Okay, fair enough.
But I'm curious to know. No, okay, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to go. So Tiger Skate Club. No, we're already past that. What we're actually doing for people that may want to is we're experiencing some technical difficulties behind the scenes, and you and I are just stretching and stretching. Everybody's waiting for the opener.
You guys are a massive help. Thank you so much.
Sam is just working furiously behind the scenes, and I'm like, hey, no problem, pal. I'll just talk about menthol cigarettes for 14 minutes. But in all seriousness, are you telling me, like with the addictive power of nicotine, with the habits that form around something like menthol, when people of all age groups, and I'm having fun obviously with the older demographic, but you know, whether it's Lamb's Navy rum or menthol cigarettes or whatever, it's like, you know, you've watched your show, you have your flavor, you have your drink, you have your routine. Are you telling me that hundreds of thousands of little old ladies across Canada quit menthols cold turkey? Not a chance. So where are all these otherwise law-abiding little old ladies getting their menthol cigarettes these days? You cannot tell me they quit. You cannot tell me they're off the menthols. Not a chance. And I want to know where all these cartons of menthols are falling off the trucks. And I want to know how the little old ladies are getting them. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's some sort of a racket that's going into long time. I mean, I might be messing with the Hells Angels right now. I mean, I might be stepping into a bear trap. I have no idea. But who's making all these menthols available, and how can we get in on the action? If you know what I'm saying, this Luke is a cash-only business. You know what I'm saying? Put it this way: if we had a digital producer and a roving journalist in the same month, chances are we're cashing in on black market menthols.
I know. First story out of the gates. Menthol cigarettes. Black market.
And we'll do big openers, like, you know, openers like sort of all artistic. The music will come up and it'll be like, little old ladies, who's buying the menthols and where? A Real Talk report presented by the team at Bitcoin Well. If you have questions about crypto, I mean, if you're curious about where it's going, or I mean, aside from the fact that just keep it locked right here, because in a second we're going to get into it with two experts. But on a daily basis, if you're trying to explore the idea around financial sovereignty, what does that actually look like? How could crypto fit into your longer term plan? You're going to want to book a chat with the team at Bitcoin Well. Real live humans that welcome the tough questions to help you make sense out of something that's new for a lot of folks. You can find them right at the top of the page as our presenting sponsor under the sponsors tab at ryanjesperson.com.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
So if you've been paying attention to, I mean, this isn't even just paying attention to markets. It's not paying attention to trends just in crypto. This is a story that makes news, period, when somebody like one of the world's most prominent inventors, entrepreneurs, Elon Musk, whether it's on Saturday Night Live or whether it's via his Twitter account, when he comments on crypto, the markets bump. And if it's Doge, and I barely know what I'm talking about, our next two guests will take us into it. But if it's Dogecoin, it bumps up. And if it's Bitcoin, it seems to trend downward. And a lot of people are going, well, is Elon Musk just controlling this whole thing? Is this whole thing just a social experiment? Vishesh Raisinghani is a financial marketer, contributes to The Motley Fool. Adam O'Brien is the president and founding CEO of Bitcoin Well. Welcome to the both of you. It's great to have you here on Real Talk. Adam, You've changed up your background. What is this now? Like this is the Bitcoin Well Lounge. What's going on now?
Well, it's just the backside of my computer, but I'm trying something out in terms of different ambiance for speaking about things and seeing what I like this setup that you have, man. This is like you're this talk show host. You've got this fancy microphone. I feel important here. This must be how you feel all the time.
You have I feel very important all the time. But you have kind of like a Howard Stern studio vibe going on right now. Very well done. And Vishesh, making your Real Talk debut. It's really great to have you here. Thanks for making time for us. Why don't we start with? I want to get both of your assessment on this. I want to encourage the two of you to interact with each other. You don't have to wait for a question from me. Elon Musk. I mean, is this a puppet master type situation? People are going, hey, listen, I'm all over the idea of getting into crypto. I'm wide open-minded to it. But if one guy has the power to control the value of it, like to the tune of 20% either way, with something as simple as a tweet, what am I supposed to make of this? Vishesh, what would you tell people?
Brian, thanks for having me on, and thanks for getting me here to speak about this. I know there's some concern from people who are not part of the industry who would say that one person has way too much influence, and in a certain degree, it's true. Yes, Elon Musk's tweets do have market-moving power right now, but the issue that he brought up was a conversation that the Bitcoin community was having for at least 12 years prior to this. So this is a genuine issue that he's turned up about the energy consumption. It's just been around for 12 years, and he's just caught on to it right now. Another thing I'd say is, to a certain degree, I think Elon Musk's influence is exaggerated, because if he had all the influence in the world, Dogecoin would have been $1 right now. That's what the community was talking about before he went on to SNL. I'm sure Adam would agree with that. After SNL, in fact, the price of Dogecoin fell. And the fact that Bitcoin is falling right now, I would say, is also partly the fact that tech stocks are falling, and Bitcoin is correlated to a certain degree with tech stocks. It's not completely Elon Musk's fault that it's falling right now. That's what I would say, in my opinion.
Adam, would you agree?
Yeah, I think, the power that Elon has isn't just related to Bitcoin either, or even just to crypto. I mean, Elon talks about GameStop not too long ago, and that shoots up. Elon's infamous tweet about funding secured and Tesla stock shoots up. I think that he's got power over multiple markets. I think that where crypto is so unique to all the other markets is that its actual trading is largely unregulated. And what I mean by that is, the TSX or the NASDAQ closes at 5 p.m. And it's closed on weekends and it's closed on holiday Monday. But Bitcoin never sleeps, baby. It is open 24/7, 365. And so I think that we've got these news cycles, and we've got how things turn around in the market and in the news. And I think that Bitcoin's kind of gains and losses in the market are exaggerated exponentially based on the powerful individuals tweeting or talking about it on SNL or what have you. And totally agree. The Doge army, as they speak, are a little bit quiet now after Elon called it a hustle, which is what Dogecoin is. It's a total joke, and quite different from Bitcoin in its financial sovereignty powers. But I would agree with most of what you said there, Vishesh.
Vishesh, let's get into that, because I never want to take for granted. One of the interesting things about the audience, one of the things, quite frankly, that makes a conversation like this challenging is the awareness or understanding, or even in some cases interest, when it comes to crypto. And so they're going to be going, I'm barely wrapping my mind around blockchain and Bitcoin and what that is. And then they'll say, my next door neighbor's talking about Ethereum. And then what's this thing about Dogecoin? And like, quite frankly, what the hell is going on? How would you evaluate or assess the difference between Dogecoin and Bitcoin?
So Dogecoin is based on the Litecoin network. It is based on let me start with the basics, to be honest. It does have a blockchain on the background. It does have some of the same principles as Bitcoin initially, but it's a fork that was created by this reporter, I think, who wanted to show the world how easy it was just to mess with this technology, if you will. And he did admit that it was a joke. He put it out there in the world and he said, do what you want with this, but this is just, it's a joke. It shouldn't be treated as anything else than that. The thing is, the community, and this shows the power of something that's based on a community, has taken it much beyond that. They've put actual money into it, which is why it's worth so much right now. But as Adam said, it is, at the end of the day, still a joke. It's still a meme. Whereas Bitcoin, the community, as well as the asset, is trying to create something genuine. It's trying to create an alternative to the rest of the financial market. That's how I would say the differences work.
I'd probably jump in there too and just highlight, like, while the technology is similar, and yes, there's a blockchain behind it, and it's we'll call it fairly decentralized. I think that the monetary policy behind Bitcoin is what gives Bitcoin its steam and kind of what gives Bitcoin its value. I think that when you have a deflationary asset, which is what Bitcoin is, meaning there is less and less that goes into circulation over time, that is the exact opposite of Dogecoin or the Canadian dollar's inflationary monetary policy, which is that there is more and more and more Doge and Canadian dollars and fiat money coming into the world at any given time. And so in and of itself is enough, I think, to make a significant distinction to the differences between kind of Bitcoin and every other altcoin and cryptocurrency out there.
Adam, you and I, and I've also spoken with other financial experts on the show about China's move to a digital currency, a digital yuan, and it's an interesting story to follow. And certainly will become more relevant. And I would imagine that more countries will be exploring these avenues. But this week on Tuesday, China essentially banning financial and payment institutions from providing cryptocurrency services. The country also warning investors against speculative crypto trading. I'm sure we could hit this from a million different angles. So I'll ask both of you, Vishesh, how significant? I mean, if you look at the price of what Bitcoin did after China made the announcement, it was pretty significant. It pushed it down below 40 G's US, which, considering where it's been this year, is not insignificant. How big of a deal do you think that the Chinese story is?
Pretty significant. I'd agree with that, Ryan. I mean, it is pretty significant, but I need to put this into context. China is where most of the Bitcoin mining is based right now, and it is also influential in the Bitcoin community, as China is influential pretty much everywhere else in the rest of the economy. They're a big part of the traditional economy, so it's no surprise that they have so much of influence in the new emerging economy of digital currencies. But I need to put into context that Chinese regulators haven't clamped down on it as hard as some people had expected. So the story has been blown out of proportion to a certain degree. They are saying that they're being cautious right now, is my reading of what they've recently said. And most of the Bitcoin community agrees as well. Because if China wanted to ban it outright, they would have just said it. They would have done it by now. They haven't. They know there's miners in the country. They're working on their own digital currency. So they're kind of in between right now is what I would say China's doing. It's not completely against digital assets.
Adam, I think too, this is not the first time China has banned Bitcoin. If you look at the headlines, this headline has shown up probably 7 or 8 times over the last 6 years now. China's in a beautiful cycle of banning Bitcoin. I suspect the Chinese government is then buying Bitcoin, and then nothing happens for 6 months. Bitcoin gets a little bit more expensive. China bans it again. They buy some more. Price goes up. China bans it again. They buy some more. The price goes up. I think this is just the Chinese government stacking and hodling as much as possible. I think what happened this week is, that news obviously is going to impact markets. There's a bunch of fresh eyes in the market, and seeing that China has banned Bitcoin is quite an interesting thing to hear. But then that, coupled with Elon's tweets, coupled with a massive custodial platform, effectively paying out a bunch of users where they shouldn't have in BlockFi. I think those 3 things combined kind of put some downward pressure on the market. And but most notably, like, the year over year chart of Bitcoin is incredible. Like, if you bought Bitcoin a year ago, you're not even looking at the price because you don't care at this point. And it's I think that should be highlighted as well.
Yeah, but so Go ahead.
Sorry, jump in over there and just add a point to Adam, because that's true. If you look at the Bitcoin chart over time, the lows are higher than the previous lows. So every year, there's a new batch of people who come in and hoard, and they just hold on to it forever. So there's a new batch of people who become permanent capital in the market, which puts a floor on how low Bitcoin can go, which is why we've never seen it go back to $10, for instance, or $100, which it used to be back in 2012, 2011. Every year it keeps moving higher.
I told Adam, and I tell Adam often, like it will be terrible for his business, but it will be great for me. I'm crossing my fingers that Bitcoin gets back down to $10 so I can have a second chance at it and load up on it. But seriously, it's not just the conversation about China banning Bitcoin. I mean, if you spend enough time online and if you read enough forums or if you get into enough discussion groups, you're going to have people saying, the U.S. Treasury, like, you really think the American president, whoever it is going to allow this to continue? Governments are going to start cracking down. And Adam, I know what you're going to say. I know you're going to say that's the whole point of Bitcoin is that they can't. But I would imagine that in some way, shape, or form, governments will find a way. Number one, they want to tax it, whether it's capital gains or whatever else. They got to find a way to tax it and get their grubby paws all over it, right? They want to share in that profit and that economic activity. But I would imagine that there are other reasons as well. Adam, first, how much of a threat do you actually think that is? I mean, and how do you, as an entrepreneur involved in Bitcoin, how do you forecast against that? I would imagine it's obviously on your radar.
Yeah, definitely. I think, we have a beautiful free market here, mostly, in North America. And I'm not too concerned about the North American governments kind of looking at that and banning Bitcoin per se. I think, like you noted, I understand the technology and banning Bitcoin would be the equivalent of like banning the internet, which is not to use the word impossible, but like for the sake of argument, impossible. And then if a government were to ban Bitcoin, you'd have to think that around the world, there would be a government that would understand the value in bringing in all of that money into their ecosystem. And I think that it would create almost like competition amongst governments. And if the Canadian government banned Bitcoin, but the US government didn't, well, you can imagine where the Bitcoiners would go. And if the North American governments banned Bitcoin, but the European governments didn't, you can imagine what kind of, emigration and then immigration would happen over into Europe. And so I would say that, as far as the free market goes, I think that Bitcoin incentivizes the governments to really think twice about how hard they crack down and how they crack down. And to your point about taxing it, it is taxed right now. It's taxed as capital gains. And my accountant at the end of the year always asks me, hey, did you sell any Bitcoin? My answer is always, why the heck would I sell any Bitcoin? And then we go from there. And so I think that, it's taxed as capital gains right now in the same way it is if you buy a carton of menthol cigarettes and sell them to granny, you got to pay capital gains on that too. And so, probably shouldn't do those correlations because one's a black market, one's not. But if you're buying and selling gold, if you're buying and selling cars, if you're buying and selling 2x4s right now, you have to claim capital gains on those things. And so Bitcoin is taxed in that way. It will, in my opinion, be very foolish to tax it like a land asset right now. When you hear about Bitcoin being a non-taxable asset, what they're talking about is like we pay property taxes on our assets that we live in. Bitcoin will, I think it'd be very foolish for a government to tax Bitcoin the way that we tax property and land.
Vishesh, where do you see that going?
I agree with that. And actually, I wanted to add two more perspectives to this. So since Adam mentioned this, because I've got a perspective of Canada, which is where I live, and India, where I used to live. If you think about Canada's economy, we've been able to take this as an arbitrage opportunity. The US has been taxing it. They haven't really put clear rules on cryptocurrency. China hasn't made its mind up. But in Canada, we have ETFs. They're listed on the stock market. You can literally put it in your TFSA. We've been very open to cryptocurrency over here in Canada. And I can see other countries such as Estonia or Singapore, for example, jumping in over here and taking advantage of the fact that the big countries haven't made their minds up. In terms of India, that's going to be the dark horse in this race. If India puts its hat into the ring and says we support cryptocurrency, which they haven't done yet, but they could do it, and that would change the game completely because that's an emerging superpower. China may or may not, like Adam mentioned, they banned it many times in the past. At some point, they'll just maybe give up and put their hat into the ring. Maybe they're doing it right now. But that's where I see this going. It's a geopolitical concern, and some countries are going to take advantage. Definitely.
This is Alex is in on our live chat, says, yeah, to what Adam said, I wondered about that with China, tanking the price so then they could get in on it. To bring it back to Elon, and then I'll move on. This is just interesting. I mean, you take a look. I think this is from Vox, right, Sarah, at some of the trends. So here's a couple of tweets. These are just a couple of examples of what Elon Musk has put out there. And if you follow the story, you know that it's more than just this. But, he talks about Tesla and Bitcoin. Tesla suspending vehicle purchases using Bitcoin. They're concerned about rapidly increasing use of fossil fuels to mine Bitcoin, which is where we'll go with these two in just a second to wrap up our conversation. And then another one here, Cyber Viking talking about Doge. How much is that Doge in the window? Take a look at this. This is from Vox. That's the source. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can see it. If you're listening to the podcast, I'll just go ahead and do my best to describe it for you. But this is how Elon Musk's tweets have moved the price of Bitcoin. You can even see this is just a sample size of basically 1 week. Right. And it's up around, what is it there? Around that 60 grand mark, just over 58 grand, talking about, he tweets that Tesla is no longer accepting Bitcoin in one afternoon. Adam, as if I need to tell this to you, Vishesh, as if you didn't notice, boom, it's down. What is it, down about 10 grand in one afternoon? Then he tweets that, Tesla's not sold its Bitcoin, suggests that Tesla's selling it. It goes up, it goes down. Pretty wild to watch the influence. Now, maybe Adam might say, maybe some of this is anecdotal. Maybe some of the other thing, we mentioned the Chinese announcement. There are other factors at play, but it's an interesting one to take a look at. A big part of that being the conversation around the ecological impact of mining Bitcoin. And this is maybe where we'll return to a quick primer so our audience can understand it if they don't already. Adam, you and I have spoken about this in past, but I got a great email from Louisa. And Louisa wrote in to talk at RyanJesperson.com, and she says, everybody's talking about the energy cost of Bitcoin mining, but I haven't heard anybody talk about the human side of it. She says, so let me make a few points. Correct me if I'm wrong on any of them. So I'm just going to throw to the two of you. You can do it. She says, so people, either individuals or groups, purchase computer equipment, specialized equipment intended for Bitcoin mining, which of course costs money. They take electricity to run, more electricity to cool them down, costing money. There's a lot of people paying a lot of money to mine Bitcoin. The mining process involves computers performing tasks over and over. She says, I don't understand the details, but it strikes me that there's a small random chance a computer will be successful. When this happens, the people who run the computers are rewarded with Bitcoin. Some miners will earn Bitcoin and be rewarded good ROI, but many of them, it seems to me, may never earn any Bitcoins, meaning they've wasted their time and money. Zero ROI. So, Louisa says, here's my question. Is Bitcoin mining basically a lottery? And for Bitcoin miners who never earn any Bitcoin, are they essentially unpaid labor? And if I make money on Bitcoin, am I profiting from the exploited labor of Bitcoin miners? I love how conscious she is about this. I love that she wanted to put the two of you in a position to help make sense of it. Vishesh, why don't you go first?
Absolutely. And it's a fair point, but I would say that this is a business. If you think about mining as a business, it has a certain degree of risk. The companies that are coming in right now, some of them are publicly listed, well-funded companies. They're not just putting money in. They're not going to lose money on this because they've done the calculation about how much they're going to generate, whether it's going to be profitable for them. Over the past 2 years, it has been genuinely profitable for them to be mining Bitcoin. So they're doing those calculations on the back end. It's not free labor. No one's going to do that. And if they did that, they'd be out of business. Essentially, the money that they put in would drive them out of business. You wouldn't have to worry about anyone doing free labor. It's the same as someone opening up a coffee shop, for instance. There's a chance they might fail, but if they win, they get rewarded for it. It's just like any other business, mining. In terms of the energy cost, if you want to talk about that, the miners who are coming on now, since I'm speaking about new miners coming on, they're moving to renewables because renewables are cheaper. This plays into the cost aspect as well. They're based in Canada, Iceland, Sweden. They're trying to move it away from China. 40% of Bitcoin mining is renewable energy, which if you think about it is higher than the United States. United States gets 12% of its energy from renewable. This is 40% for the Bitcoin ecosystem. In Canada, majority of energy comes from renewable. It comes from hydroelectricity. And if you are a mining company in Canada, you're cleaner than the rest of the world. And cheaper because it's getting cheaper than traditional fuels.
Adam, what would you say to Louisa?
Yeah, I think you were awfully generous there in calling that a fair point. That is just not a fair point at all. That's a ridiculous thing to ask.
Why?
Because the miners are computers; they're not people.
Well, no, but the computers aren't free.
Correct, but to what Vishesh said, I think that when you embark on trying to make money and you do that by way of investment, you should expect, and like you said, do the calculations to ensure that you get a return on that investment. If I dumped $1 million into a gold mining operation and decided to dig up Mount Everest because I assumed there was a ton of gold there, and I paid the government and all things went to plan and logistically it was made possible, and I found no gold to be in Mount Everest, that would just be because I was stupid, not because I was exploited. And anyone that bought gold or profited off of gold that I didn't find would not be harmed. It would just be me and my own, lack of ability to look at where the market was in doing that.
But you can't guarantee to
works,
find Bitcoin, can't you? Can't guarantee that mining Bitcoin is going to produce, can you?
You can do it with a reasonable algorithm, I think. I think that I've been running Bitcoin miners on and off since 2013. All of my miners have found some Bitcoin. And if you want to be incredibly risk averse, you can sign up for a mining pool. And what the mining pool does is it points your miner towards a group of miners. And the pool pays you based on the amount of power you contribute to the pool, regardless of whether or not your miner actually finds Bitcoin. What it says is we as a collective, we as a pool have X hash rate attacking the algorithm. We are paying X dollars per hash rate. So if you contribute a very, very small amount or a large amount of hash rate, we're going to pay you based on the work you do, based on the work your miner does, not based on how many Bitcoin you find. So I think that, I love the consciousness behind, exploitation. And obviously we don't want to exploit anyone. But that's just wrong. And then following up on the energy side, recent studies actually have shown that 70% of Bitcoin mining worldwide are coming from renewable energies. But further to that, Bitcoin is probably one of the only industries that incentivizes the technology of renewables because it has direct profit correlated to that. The fossil fuels industry is going to suffer from the advent of renewable energies and from the progression of renewable energies. I think that Bitcoin mining, as a comparison to that, is going to benefit quite significantly from the advent and advancement in technology to renewable energies. Second to that, Bitcoin mining is a consumer. I don't hear anyone upset at you and I I'm plugged into I got some lights going, I got cameras, I got computer, I got this microphone. It's all plugged into the wall. I have no idea where the power comes from in the wall. I pay a couple $1,000 a month for my power at the office and away we go. Bitcoin miners do the same thing. And so I would also put the onus on the power providers. Are they, providing clean energy or are they providing, fossil fuel energy? And I'm not sure why all the onus has suddenly gone onto Bitcoin to make that change when they just plug machines into a wall. Where the power comes from the wall is not really up to them.
I want to jump in over that, and because I completely agree with this. If I just get a second, I could just add to this a little bit.
You can have as much time as you'd like.
Thanks for that, because this is really a point that I've been thinking about a lot recently. And if you think about the community that hasn't invested in Bitcoin, yes, they see it as a waste. They don't see the point of people creating this digital currency, and what's the point of using so much of electricity for something that's completely unnecessary from their perspective. That's not true, because Bitcoin is being used in some countries where the economies are falling apart. They're using it in Venezuela, they're using it in Nigeria, they're using it in Palestine, from what I can say. It does give people sovereignty where their own economy is falling apart. It gives them an option out of their local economy. So it is useful, and this usefulness is going to be more apparent as the industry develops. Secondly, for the energy use, Adam made a great point about being plugged in and using a lot of energy as consumers generally. No one ever talks about how much YouTube is using, in the sense of how that electricity would be compared to a nation. If you thought about the servers that are powering YouTube, or something as frivolous as TikTok, for example, which I would say is frivolous, but then again, people using it would say it isn't. Again, Bitcoin isn't completely frivolous because it is helping people in economies that are falling apart.
And my thought on this as a layperson is that the significance or the integration or the point of crypto will become more and more and more apparent over time. And if, like in some other circumstances, it evaporates into nothing, then so be it. But I know a lot of people, including the two of you, don't feel that that's the way it's going to go. Let me ask you this in closing, because we have a roundtable ready to rock and roll. They're all hanging out in the bullpen right now. Adam, tomorrow, May 22nd, it's a big anniversary. It'll be, if my math is correct, the 11-year anniversary of the first Bitcoin transaction. Will you be ordering a pizza to commemorate the day? And if so, how will you be paying for the pizza? Tell us the story.
Yeah, absolutely. This has got to be one of the best stories of Bitcoin. So May 22, 2010, a gentleman in the UK purchased 2 pizzas from a Papa John's in New York for 10,000 Bitcoin. By today's math, a $500 million pair of pizzas. And so, yes, we love to celebrate Bitcoin Pizza Day here in town. We're going to be doing some 21 pizza giveaways to celebrate a bit of a new office opening in Calgary. And so stay tuned on our Twitter for that. But it's funny too, like we all have these stories. Like me, myself, I have a 30 Bitcoin shoe collection that I foolishly collected, a few years ago. And we, when you're in Bitcoin, we're not used to this deflationary asset that just continually increases. We've all got a fiat mindset that our money becomes less and less valuable over time. And so we're incentivized to spend it as much and as fast as possible. No one is trading their US dollars in for pesos. People are running from peso to US dollars. And I think that in that same way, our mindset in these westernized cultures with solid currency systems are going to change from that fiat mindset into that Bitcoin mindset, which is, do I actually want to spend these coins on this pizza or on those shoes or that office furniture? Or am I more inclined to hold this Bitcoin and just do with what I have?
Vishesh, do you have one you'd like to take back? A transaction you'd like to take back?
A transaction? No. I won't even accumulating ever since I've got onto this.
Smart man.
Way too late, to be honest. I first found it in 2013. I should have bought at that time, but I barely ever sell. I did sell about 30% of it earlier this year when the market was at, too frothy. But then again, I accumulate in general. I don't spend it on consumer goods.
Vishesh Raisinghani is the founder of Sharp Ascension. It's a financial content marketing agency out of Toronto. Investments research focused on financial tech. Do you just call it fintech? If I want to sound like I know what I'm talking about, fintech.
That's the one, my man.
Yeah, it'll roll off the tongue next time.
You're like an industry expert now.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, except don't listen to me. Bitcoin, AI, EVs, green energy. I mean, your wheelhouse is all the stuff that intrigues us. And of course, Adam O'Brien, a friend of the show, the founding CEO of Bitcoin Well. You can find him online under our sponsors tab. Thanks to the both of you, and have a happy May long weekend.
Thanks so much, Ryan. Take care. Great to meet you, Vishesh.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Adam. Have a great weekend.
Appreciate it. Take care, fellas. We'll get to our roundtable in just a second. Wanted to remind you very quickly, the team at Kubi Energy right now, another partner of ours, they present positive reflections on our first show of every week. So next week, that's going to be Tuesday. Our team is observing the long weekend. We're going to spend some time outdoors, getting some fresh air. And, Sarah Hoyles is probably going to be out there like weeding and putting in all the effort, and I'm going to be lazing around doing absolutely nothing like a deadbeat. It's the plan anyway.
No comment.
Kubi Energy will present positive reflections Tuesday morning. We've already got one submission that had tears. They didn't quite fall out of my eyes yesterday, but they were hovering. Those ones where especially around the bottom eyelid, they just start to fill and fill and fill, and it's just this beautiful video. It's like sad and beautiful, but it fits in positive reflections because of the sentiments attached to it. That's all I'm going to say. You're not going to want to miss it. We want to hear the stories, see the photos, view the videos that have enriched your life, that have made your days, so to speak. Kubi Energy, of course, operating in Western Canada with offices out of Edmonton and Kamloops, doing solar installations, helping people achieve their green energy goals. commercial, residential, and of course, industrial. They've done some huge projects as well. Online at kubienergy.ca. The team at Sherwood and St. Albert Dodge, I mentioned it earlier. I mean, speaking of green, speaking of sustainability, if you check out my Instagram story right now, it'll be up for another few hours. I posted it yesterday. That new Jeep Wrangler 4xE. This is the EV, the electric version of the Jeep Wrangler, like the big, awesome, the classic boxy Wrangler. I had a chance to drive it around a little bit. The thing is like silent. I've never driven anything like it. They've got one, at least one, right now at St. Albert Dodge. You can go check it out, Sherwood Dodge as well. And the team at Friesen Brothers. Sam, can we call up this tweet? I absolutely loved this one from an audience member. We always want to see your photos, whether it's on Instagram, Twitter, tag us. And our partners, too. This from Shadow Welch, who said, Jespo, last night I went to the new Friesen Brothers location, South Edmonton. He says, I love the store. I had to take some pictures of the produce. He says, I wanted to get some photos of their fried chicken, but I'll do that some other time. Look at that. Absolutely beautiful. Friesen Brothers has been supporting Alberta producers for more than 65 years. Alberta grown, Alberta owned in 15 locations across the province. Well, every Friday around this time, we bring you our Friday Real Talk Roundtable. And I'm excited about this one today. It's kind of a homegrown idea based on conversations we were having as a team about barriers, or if I can say hurdles, to getting involved in sport. And we've lined up a panel that I think is going to take this in many interesting directions. Rosey Kulba is the founder of Tigers Skate Club. Kwame Damon Mason is a filmmaker, the man behind Soul on Ice. He's a podcaster as well. He's done amazing work with the National Hockey League, and we're going to learn more about that. And Nick Holt is a professor in the Faculty of Kinesiology, Sport and Recreation at the University of Alberta. A warm welcome to the three of you. Thank you so much for being here. Kwame, why don't we start with you? Talk about diversity in sport or barriers in sport. I mean, this conversation's been growing, and in large part because of the work you've been doing. You've been driving these conversations in the hockey community. How did you get involved in this?
I think for me, it was really just started out as a passion for the growth of the game of hockey. When I was living in Alberta, I was kind of finishing up my radio career. I felt like radio just didn't have a place for me. And that was one of the actually first places where I just felt there was a lack of diversity and there was nothing I could do about that. And so I, transitioned out and, thought about, my next steps. And I always wanted to do film, and hockey was a big passion of mine. I was really getting into a lot more of the documentary phase, because around around 2010-ish, documentaries were really popping off. And so I wanted to combine the two things that I had a love for, which was documentary filmmaking and hockey. And the one thing I noticed about the game of hockey was that there was more minority kids starting to play pivotal roles in the National Hockey League. And I wanted to make sure that the history was told in the right context. So I just embarked on, making a film that it was dedicated to the history and contributions of Black athletes in the game of hockey.
Had you grown up, were you a huge hockey fan from the time that you were a kid? Was this always one of the sports that really captured your attention, your enthusiasm?
Yeah, I'm Canadian. So, my earliest memories was having a hockey stick in my hand and playing road hockey with my friends here in Toronto as a kid, and playing in the MTHL, which is now the GTHL, the hockey organization in Toronto. So hockey's always been a passion, and I had a love for it, but it just did have its barriers back then, in the sense that it wasn't marketed towards people that looked like me. So you kind of kept it as a guilty pleasure. You had to listen to all the stereotypes and all the naysayers about it from both sides. My Black friends would call it the white boy sport, and my white friends would say, Black people don't like hockey because it's too cold. So you just sit there in the middle and, just kind of keep it silent to yourself. But, when you get older and you're more confident in your own skin, you're able to now be a lot more forceful in the things that you love and more intentional. And, especially in the day and age we are in now, and what I learned on my journey making the film, I just thought, how stupid have we been as a society, as a Canadian nation that prides itself on the fact that we call hockey our national sport, but yet still we do not celebrate the history and contributions of the minorities that helped form the game that we see today.
A little later on in this roundtable, I want to get into some of the stories that you've heard, some of the stories that you've told, some of the epiphanies that you've had. Rosey, we learned a little bit about Tiger Skate Club from one of your members, who happens to be the producer of this program. There she is, Sarah Hoyles, and so she brought us up to speed a little bit. But some people are just going to be joining the conversation now, or just be hearing this roundtable on the podcast. So bring us up to speed. This is a skate club that specifically reaches out, if I understand correctly, to either a women or a gender diverse sample of people that are really interested in getting involved in the sport but may not have had an open door. Have I summed it up accurately?
Absolutely. So we are an Edmonton-based skate club that fosters towards women and girls in skateboarding, as well as non-binary, trans folks, and gender fluid folks as well. And we have meetups at Edmonton skate parks all around Edmonton. And we just have like a inclusive environment where lots of people are welcome. Some of our members are as young as 4 years old, and then we go up all the way up to women in their 40s. And we find that there was not a lot of representation for women in skateboarding in Edmonton. I myself found that when I was going to skate parks and trying to learn tricks and things like that, it was often a very intimidating environment for women and girls. And when you get to that skate park, it's male dominated, and sometimes men are coming up to you and offering unsolicited advice or asking you to prove yourself via can you do a kickflip right now? So it's a very intimidating environment. So we wanted to provide that inclusive environment for women to feel like they had somewhere to go and they could be part of a team and feel like we could take over the skate park and really do something with that.
Well, I can't wait to hear about some of the stories that you've witnessed. I would imagine you've seen a few people blossom skill-wise, interest-wise, and otherwise. Dr. Holt, your research, or at least a large part of your research, has been about this, about barriers in sport, in particular participation when it comes to children from low-income families. How did this get on your radar? And can you take us into your area of study?
Yeah, I can actually take it back to my dad. I grew up in Wales, and we could afford to play sport, and it was a lot cheaper then. But and I didn't realize at the time, but my dad, he wasn't a coach, he wasn't a player, but he got involved with a couple of local sport clubs, and actually started a cricket league, cricket being a popular sport in Britain. And what I didn't know at the time was there were lots of kids who couldn't afford it. And the way that he set it up, he did it in ways that it could be affordable and the fees wouldn't be a barrier. And so as a kid playing, I didn't really know. I didn't know about this. I just thought it was the way it was, and everyone got a chance to play. And then, of course, as I got older, and particularly when I moved to Canada, I realized that the costs were higher for a start. And I actually came to Canada for graduate school, and I couldn't afford to play. And I had a really good network, and I was really well connected and all that kind of stuff. And I realized that, there'd be thousands of children, say in Edmonton, who'd be in a situation where they're excluded from sport for lots of different reasons. So one of the things that I can do, one of the small things I can do, is do some research on the topic and look at it from that perspective. So that's really how I got started, and that's why I'm interested in this topic.
It would be such an unfair question for me to ask you, so what have you found? Because I imagine that we could speak for hours about what you've found. But when it comes to barriers in sport, in particular economic barriers in sport, how are we doing as a society on A, identifying the barriers, and B, working to remove them?
There's some great organizations, things like Free Play for Kids, Kids Sport, that do incredible work. But they can only have so much influence. I'll also say lots of sport clubs do have systems in place where they might waive costs or reduce costs or do payment plans, but they often don't advertise these things because they could get very expensive for clubs that have little revenue. But in terms of the barriers, financial cost is the obvious one, and financial costs increase the more you go into sport. So the higher level you get, the more the costs increase, so the more it becomes exclusionary. So you've got registration fees, you've got more hidden costs. Equipment is more obvious, but transportation, getting there, we find things like parents might work 2 jobs, and one of those jobs might be in the evening. So actual transportation costs, the financial costs, but also the labor costs. You've got all these hidden types of costs as well. And then I think socially and just knowing where to go. So if you think about someone who's first coming to Canada, now I'll use my own experience. I spoke the language, I had good connections to the university, I had loads of support. I had no idea how to get connected with organizations, and I was an adult. So imagine if you're coming to Canada, you're quite new, maybe you don't, English is not strong, you don't understand what organizations are available, you don't know what support might be out there. It's an incredibly challenging proposition to even get involved. And then you're relying on something being in your local community as well, which isn't always the case. You might have to travel, and might not be a bus route that goes there when it's -30 in the middle of winter. So, I mean, lots of the barriers are quite predictable, but there's some of these kind of hidden things that act as barriers that go beyond the financial cost.
That's a great point. Kwame, we've got a filmmaker out of Alberta by the name of Mariah Braun that's watching right now. She goes, oh my gosh. She says, Kwame's a fellow Guyanese. Do you say Guyanese? Is that how you pronounce it? You're from Guyana, is that
Guyanese.
right? She says, it's all caps, exclamation marks everywhere. She says, I love Soul on Ice. She says, that's such a good film.
Right.
She's a filmmaker, so there you go. You had a chance. You've interviewed pros like, watched him play last night. Wayne Simmons, the Toronto Maple Leafs, Joel Ward, Trevor Daley. You've talked to Tony McKagney, of 5-time Stanley Cup champion, Grant Fuhrer. What did you hear, like story-wise, anecdotally, about some of the barriers that these black athletes, specifically hockey players, faced, and maybe not just as young kids getting involved in the sport, but I would imagine all the way up to the pros, right?
Yeah, I think for the most part, a lot of their stories were, very much the same. Hearing it in the stands, hearing it from other opposing players, usually from teammates. You have a more cohesive or a more brotherly love type of atmosphere for them, but for some of these guys, it was the added pressure of being on the ice. So, for example, if you talk to a guy like Mike Marzen, who was the second black athlete to play in the National Hockey League, and he was drafted to the Washington Capitals in 1974, he broke it down to me like this. He said, as a professional athlete in the game of hockey, you're highly focused, especially before the game starts, and the mental preparation is something that a lot of us take for granted that they have to have and they have to do. And he said to me, imagine have to not only be mentally prepared for the game, but also having to be mentally prepared to watch your back. And equipment manager may come in and say, yeah, the Philadelphia Flyers are picking straws to see who's going to fight the black guy tonight, or having the FBI come to you before a game and say, Mr. Marzen, we've had some death threats, so we'll be in the stands just to make sure that you're safe. Like all those type of pressures that your teammates can't really understand or relate to. I remember Mike told me a story where after FBI came to him and told him that there's death threats and somebody might have a gun in the stands, that his teammates were like, well, I'm not, don't sit too close to me on the bench. And I mean, that's not really funny, and to think about having to go through these extra pressures were some of the things that these guys had to deal with. And plus, not having a support system, especially back then, was huge. We talk about mental health so much now, but the 70s, 80s, even the early 90s, mental health wasn't a thing to talk about. So as a Black athlete, that when you're the only person on the team and you're maybe getting verbally abused or physically challenged just because of the color of your skin on a nightly basis, that takes a toll on you. And when you have nobody to talk to about this after your game, or it just weighs on them. And a lot of these guys kept a lot of the things that happened to them internally, so that they weren't labeled as troublemakers or a disturbance on their team. So I always say, and maybe some people will challenge, but I think that a lot of Black athletes who played in the past, some of them suffer from some trauma just for playing the game of hockey that they love.
Do you think that hockey culture is changing or has changed? I mean, let's be honest, there are still stories. I mean, I can think of, I think off the top of my head, I should research, but you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was Wayne Simmons, as a matter of fact. Wasn't it like a couple of years ago that somebody threw a banana peel at him on the ice? Wasn't that Wayne Simmons? It was one of the Black NHLers. I mean, have you noticed that culture is changing, or is this still a very real issue?
Yeah, that happened to Wayne Simmons in London, Ontario during an exhibition match. It also happened to Kevin Weeks in a playoff game. This is something that, in my opinion, is never really gonna just fully be gone. It's like bigotry and racism. Whenever I hear statements like "end racism" or "end bigotry," I try to look at people and say, just be honest with what you're saying. Like, you're not going to eliminate ignorance from human beings. What you will do is, make it to a point where it's at a very low level, or those people that are doing these are the minority, not the majority. And so hockey culture has changed. Yeah, it has changed. But, as far as the situations that happen to young athletes of color, oh man, like it's almost on a daily basis that you will hear something. I know I was mentoring a kid that just a year and a half, close to 2 years ago, was verbally abused by his teammates, to the point that when their team, which was from a private school, played in Europe for a tournament, his teammates jumped him and they beat him up. And to the point that when they got back, the mother had to take him out of the team. And so these things happen. And I think what's good about right now is there are systems in place, there are people in place like myself, Trevor Daly, a lot of these players right now that are reaching out to all these kids to let them know that they're not alone. The problem was in the past is these things would happen to kids of color and they felt like they were alone. So either they quit the game of hockey, or they just had to deal with it and deal with the mental trauma. Best story I ever heard was from George LaRock, who, when he was 8 years old, his parents wanted him to stop playing hockey because of the verbal abuse that they heard in the stands. And his words to them exactly was, "If I quit, they win." So I thank God for guys like George for persevering through adversity. And, it has made a difference, and we just fight through it every day, and I'm just glad that there's a support system for these kids now.
Rosey, when we talk about the culture of skateboarding, or maybe some barriers, some gender-based barriers that people might experience at the different levels, what have you noticed with the participants in Tigers Skate Club? Have you seen? I mean, I would imagine there's a certain solidarity. Kwame kind of touched on that a little bit with regards to strength in numbers, or even his efforts, or Trevor Daly's, or anyone else, in reaching out and in reiterating that there's a sense of community. Do you see that in action having a tangible impact?
Oh, absolutely. When we go to the skate park as a big group of skaters, it's fantastic because we are able to take over the skate park. And a lot of the times when you're there on your own as a woman, you second guess yourself and you wonder, is it my chance for a run? There's no like real rules about how people take turns at a skate park. But one thing that we like to do is just go out as a team, and we're able to just show people that we are here and we're really representing our space, and we're able to do that. A couple of my members have had those experiences where they go to the skate park and they're directly questioned by some members who are already there, or some people who are there. One of my co-founders, Shar, she was actually trying to do a pretty difficult skill, the skill of dropping into a half pipe, and she was questioned by an 8-year-old boy just straight off. Do you think you can do this? Should you really be doing this? And so if she was not able to have that confidence within herself and say, no, I've got the skills, I have the knowledge, she would have been scared off of that skill development. So being there as a team and being there to support each other has been huge for us. And I mean, we've seen, go ahead.
No. What have you seen?
We've seen lots of women and girls get supported by their parents as well. So moms will come with their daughters, and the daughters kind of inspire the moms to try new skills.
Yeah.
And people who are absolute beginners are able to just step on the board for the first time. So that's fantastic. And then also people who have given up skating, maybe their 30s or in their 40s, for some reason they were discouraged by the skating environment, the lack of inclusivity, the lack of representation in the industry or in the mainstream magazines like Thrasher Magazine or other brand representations. But now we're able to come together as a team and really support each other with that. So it's nice to encourage each other, and you'll see a lot of skaters encouraging each other and just actually helping with direct coaching skills at our meetups. And that's fantastic too. And within the world of skateboarding, it has really improved in terms of representation with brands and skateboarding labels. There's now an entirely skateboard label for women by women called Meow Skateboards, and a few other initiatives as well. And Canada Skateboarding as well has published on their website a province by province listing across Canada of girls and women's skateboard communities. So it's not just us, and we have been mentored by many people. 100% Skate Club here in Calgary or close to us in Calgary have mentored us directly, and Industry Rosettes in Red Deer too. So it's a growing phenomenon, women on skateboards. And of course, with the 2021 Olympics coming up too, that's a fantastic opportunity for representation.
Well, when I first, this is not meant to, don't read too much into it. But when I first heard, and when Sarah was first telling me about Tiger Skate Club, I was picturing kind of a bunch of people that probably like to have a good time. I was picturing it sort of like as a maybe like a drinking club that skateboards, like we have like a drinking club with a golfing problem, like the same sort of idea. I was expecting a bunch of, I won't say hipsters, but like about a certain demographic. And then as soon as I checked out your Instagram account and you're seeing like young girls, you're seeing tweens and teens and adults, and I'm going, it's not what I expected at all. And it looks to me like the draw. I mean, you've created a community almost, I guess, out of nothing that really is going to be opening up people's opportunities across age demographics, which is really remarkable. I mean, and I'm sure that's not lost on you.
Oh, absolutely. Like, it's fantastic that we have like the 4-year-olds coming out with their rad dad fathers and the moms getting inspired too. And yes, just to see the team building and the community that is building around that. And the need was there. So we saw that need and we just kind of built on that. And the response has been incredible. Like, currently we are not having skate park meetups due to COVID restrictions,
right?
But people are just waiting on us to get started again. And we're so excited to get back live at the park. And but we are thinking of other initiatives to keep that going, just like some video tutorials, or Canada Skateboard is actually hosting a contest that our club is going to be a part of. So that's going to be fantastic as well.
Onward and upward. I love it. Professor Holt, let's not take for granted here that, I mean, generally speaking, Kwame's you're talking about hockey and Rosey, you're talking about skateboarding, and we could talk about golf, and we could talk about a whole bunch of different sports. Surfing is an interesting example. But when it comes to the benefit of sport, or why this should be a conversation, why barriers to sport, or maybe open doors into sport should be a conversation that everybody cares about. Let's not let this opportunity pass us by without getting into why sport and organized sport is so important. What does your research tell you about that?
You're seeing it a lot on social media right now. People lamenting what's been taken away from their kids with COVID, and talking about the mental health benefits quite a lot. I mean, what we've found consistently through studies in lots of different countries all over Canada, you can kind of talk about personal, social, and the physical type health or well-being benefits. They're really consistent. So things like the social skills, learning new people, learning to work with and meet and deal with people from different social backgrounds, because often sport will provide you a new social network that's outside of your school or your immediate community. So I'll draw kids from different schools to a sport team or something like that. So you're expanding your social network, you're building those social skills. People can learn about some form of kind of self-discipline, resilience, but none of this is just automatic by just kind of chucking a ball in front of them. It's about building a sense of community. It's about adults who care in the right ways, delivering sport, where they put the children first and put the children's developmental experiences above like winning and things like that. And so tons of benefits for sure, but it doesn't happen by magic. And there's plenty of examples of people who go into sport and have terrible experiences and then want to find something else to do. And I love the skateboarding example, because I'm sure you've got many people there who were involved in some kind of organized, I would imagine, team sport when they were younger. Something didn't work out. They go away, and having opportunities to come back and doing things on their own terms with that social support network seems really important to me. So yeah, in my opinion, tons of benefits. I love sport, but I know that these things don't just happen automatically. It's the caring adults who are there that make a difference. Most of these adults are volunteers. It's just parents or other people volunteering and trying to do their best. It's not necessarily always like trained professionals, although you're seeing more of that. But the role of adults, we cannot understate the role of those supportive, caring, mentoring adults to create the environment. And then if you create that environment, more kids will gain these positive outcomes. And if you don't, it's just left to chance.
I want to get into our live chat here a little bit. Hannah says, if anybody, for our local audience out of the city where we broadcast from, Hannah says, if anybody in Edmonton wants to join a diverse rugby club, she says, look up the Edmonton Rockers. They are the oldest woman-only club in the city, which is great. A lot of people are talking about their own history and coming up in sport. Jillian is a former figure skater, I'm assuming, based on her comments here. She says the cost of ice in Alberta is out of control. She says there's no way, though, that it may be high or as high as it is in Quebec. In Quebec, skating and hockey clubs have had their own arenas. You don't bid or compete for ice, but there can be cost implications, obviously. A lot of other people are talking about steps that their parents took for them or sacrifices their families made. Randy Thunderhorse says racism in hockey is alive and well. Black, Indigenous, and Asian players continue to experience racism today. Fatima makes a good point. Says what happens in sport will reflect what's happening in society. And when we collectively make it unacceptable to be racist or bigoted or trans or homophobic in society, we will begin to see change in sport. I mean, Kwame, I know that we're you're here talking about the experience of your filmmaking, Soul on Ice and your lived experience as a black man in Canada and a hockey fan. But we also see movement in hockey on other fronts. I don't know, eliminating other barriers, but at least addressing them. The Pride Tape initiative, I know, has been a really huge one. And for National Hockey League teams, even just in warm-ups, to be practicing or to be warming up using sticks that are taped with that rainbow tape, it sends a message. And I think across sport, it's safe to say that generally speaking, we don't see a lot of gay, lesbian, trans, or queer athletes that are out, at least not at a professional level. How would you assess the job? I mean, when you talk about governing bodies or the most powerful organizations, specifically in hockey, I would think you're looking at the IIHF, the International Ice Hockey Federation, of course, the National Hockey League. The NHL has rolled out some really interesting initiatives over the past number of years, including on green energy, including on reaching out to marginalized communities. How would you assess the job that the big governing bodies are doing?
From the NHL's point of view, I feel like they are going in the right direction as far as having the conversations to understand what needs to be done to grow the game in the future. I'm a part of the fan inclusion committee with the National Hockey League, and there's the player inclusion committee and the youth committee as well. And I think the conversations are being had, and people who are directly affected are in these committees and are actually having these discussions. We just did a presentation for Gary Bettman and a couple other of the owners, and that's where we have to start. Now, in my part of the presentation, the biggest thing that I said to them was they have to be passionate about this more so than anybody else, because their passion will trickle down to their employees, and from there these things will happen. There's still times where I scratch my head because there's a lot of opportunities that are missed, and you have to just keep talking about it and talking about it and talking about it. But the fact that there's a group of people out here that are not giving up is very encouraging, in my opinion, that at some point things will happen. I always tell people this is not a marathon. I mean, this is not a sprint. This is a marathon. And I also feel that I'm going to be very old, much older than I am now, when the game of hockey looks and feels the way that I envision that it should, especially in our multicultural North America. But that's the work. And, we're here to do this for the children. And if we have that as our focal point, then I think that's common, that we all want our children to have safe spaces and to be an inclusive environment. I grew up in a very inclusive environment, and I want that for my child and for everybody else's child, especially in the game of hockey and in any other sport.
Rosey, is a word like I grew up. I adored skateboarding growing up. Like I was never great at it, but I absolutely loved it. And when you talk about the young girl dropping in on a half pipe, I immediately had the like audio experience. I was taken back to the sound of skateboard wheels. A skateboard dropping in on a half pipe is a really special and beautiful sound. Do people still use the phrase Betties?
Ben's? Sorry, could you repeat that?
Betties, like Betty.
Oh, that's an important one. Yeah, actually, there's a friend of mine who has the boarding Betties, and she has her own little club all about that. But it's more inclusive for snowboarding, skateboarding, and other board sports like paddleboarding. So yeah, I haven't heard that one in a lot of
like 30 years
lately. It's more like I think from the 90s, but
or the 80s. You don't have to let me down gently, but I just remember when I was skating, and it was always like if there were girls that were skating, they were called Betties, but it was never a derogatory term. It was always just like, but what was significant about it is that it would identify somebody and almost like maybe not in the best way, right? In other words, anybody showing up at a skate park, if you were a male, if you're a boy, it's not going to be pointed out. Your gender is not the first thing that everybody's going to note. And I just remember even as a kid, this is just anecdotal. I remember there'd be like, oh, there's a Betty here, or check out that Betty on the quarter pipe. You know, and it was kind of it was interesting, and I'm only processing it now 30 years later of what what must have been like for a girl or for a woman to show up at a skate park, especially if she's the only one, and to immediately have that attention on her. When we talk about, like, I asked Kwame about how's IIHF or how's the NHL doing on this, I would imagine in skateboarding, sure, there's the Olympics, and there's like the X Games, but it's also an individual sport. It's a hobby for a lot of people. So I would imagine that the pop culture and the marketing side of it is maybe the equivalent of what the NHL might be in the context of a hockey discussion. Do you see equality there? Do you see sponsorship equality? Are female or gender fluid, professional skaters, are they making as much money as the men? I mean, how would you evaluate it at the highest levels?
Interesting. Yeah, I would say that it's an interesting changing dynamic right now. Like, there is representation in the mainstream magazines such as Thrasher, and we've got some out trans skaters such as Leo Baker, and she has created her own his own board company, Glue Skateboards. And then there's some other companies as well, such as Skate Like a Girl, which is an organization to really improve that inclusivity and do coaching. And they have their own YouTube channel where girls can go and gather that information that they need, like how to set up a skateboard, how to push around on a skateboard for the very first time. So all the nitty gritty stuff, like how to enter a skate shop and ask for the right equipment. So how do you do all of that? And I would say that those brands that are coming out, this more and more common nowadays, like we've got the Meow skateboards, and definitely we've got way more women representation now. There's the Olympics, of course, but every issue of Thrasher, there's at least one woman represented, I would say, for sure, and a little bit of inclusivity there. So it's starting to change, and it's a changing environment, but we definitely have a long ways to go.
Professor Holt, I'm a great comment here from Kim, who's watching in live. She's watching on YouTube, and everybody's talking about cost is a huge barrier for a lot of families, and access is a big barrier to a lot of families as well. And she makes a good point around access and sort of the position that their family has taken, and talking about opportunities. And I've noticed some comments around how different clubs are built. Now we have to be honest. I mean, I think of different sports, and there's kind of the club idea or even the specialized schools that families that are either able to afford or families that really sacrifice to be able to afford. And I don't take those efforts for granted either. These kids are on almost, ideally in their parents' eyes, hopefully, right? Like a straight shot to a college scholarship, or they're working to give them the best access or the best shot to a professional career or to reach the ultimate goal. And then you have the more, I don't know what you'd call them, but they're not rep leagues or rep teams. They're more like community teams, right? Where kids of varying skill levels may have more of an opportunity to participate. Do we see that in addressing whether it's fiscal barriers, access barriers, or otherwise? Do you see a movement? Have you noticed a movement where there's more of an awareness there of building teams less based on who's going to win the league championship, and a little bit more cognizant of opening the door and making sports accessible to people? Is that a thing? Is that a trend?
Trend? Not yet. I think you've got individuals who are aware of those types of things and trying to make those types of changes. But structurally, those more intensive types of programs you've just described, someone's got to pay for them, because now you're dealing with professional coaches, people, it's their job, so someone's got to pay for that. So I think those elite streams, we haven't really seen. I'm sure there's sports that are good examples, and I'm sure there's isolated examples of clubs that are doing a great job. But overall, structurally, no. As you go further in sport, it's going to cost more. If you go into these elite rep type things with travel and tournaments and showcases, it's going to cost more. Strength and conditioning programs, those kind of university preparation type things that you see. But I tell you one thing I have seen: if you're really, really good, that's when pathways might open up. If you're the best player who might help the team win, if you're the person who might go on to be a professional, yes, people might make exceptions there. But that's certainly not the system that we've got right now. And you can pick, it's not always better in other countries, but some of the things that you see in some of the Scandinavian countries, you get more direct subsidy of sport programs. You get these multi-sport types of clubs located in communities. They become a hub of a community. It's not free in these Scandinavian countries. There's still payments involved. But a club at a multi-sport club at the heart of thriving community can be a great place to provide opportunities and access to tons of kids. And then those really talented kids will find a pathway one way or another. And there's not just one pathway, and they vary across different sports. But if you go back to what you're saying, if there's more awareness, yeah, I'm sure there's more awareness from individuals. The system, no. I look at something like Jumpstart's doing some funding right now, and they're tying it to diversity type goals and like equity, diversity, inclusion type goals. If you started tying funding to specific initiatives that include opening up access, then I think you'd see change.
Kwame, I know you got to go right now. We got to respect your time, but it seems like something the professor said really resonated with you. So I want to give you a chance to respond before we thank you for your time.
No, I think it's very interesting because I could think of Anthony and Chris Stewart, both who had some really great careers in the National Hockey League. And that's the perfect example. These guys, they came from literally nothing. And they were good enough to the point where, the cost of playing was, let go because, they were good enough to help the team out. And I think that's great. But, there's still those kids who just want to play and maybe are not at that high level, and it takes them away from the game. But, I think there are opportunities out there, and there are organizations out there that are trying to help alleviate the costs, especially in the game of hockey. I think we have to do a better job. I think what will happen for that to change is we need more competition. We need more equipment companies out there that will lower the cost a little bit more. And the biggest thing for me is we're Canadian, and we want to outdo every other country, especially on the national stage when it comes to the game of hockey. And we are excluding a lot of great athletes because of that barrier of cost, and I think if we can eliminate that, then, we are going to be able to deliver a better product. And just like the professor said, the social benefits of sport are just phenomenal, and we have to consider that more than anything else, to be honest with you, because that social interaction that these kids get growing up and being a part of a sport carries on to make them better people in the world. So would you rather your kid in a sport, or would you rather them at the mall or on the street? Do kids go to the mall anymore? But you know what I mean?
I think they do. Yeah, I see anecdotal evidence that even in the midst of a full-blown pandemic, kids still go to the mall. Yeah, I think so. Exactly. That's Kwame Damon Mason. He's the filmmaker behind Soul on Ice. Make sure you check it out. A fantastic project. Rosey Kulba is the founder of Tigers Skate Club. You can find them on Instagram and Facebook. And Dr. Nick Holt, Vice Dean of the Faculty of Kinesiology, Sport and Recreation at the University of Alberta. Thank you to the three of you for this. This is great.
Thank you, guys. That was awesome. Really appreciate you guys, and keep up the great work, you guys.
Thanks, Kwame. It's great to see you again, my man. Appreciate that.
You too, brother.
I love this from Lisa. Lisa says, I wasn't allowed to do anything competitive growing up, so no sports for me. Lisa says, I've become not just a huge sports fan, but a sports photographer. Lisa says, I experience the game through the moments I capture. It's not easy. As a man, let me explain what she's talking about.
Oh, please do. I would love that. I actually need you to do that.
Let me explain what Lisa's saying here. What I think is so remarkable about that, I would love to pick her brain on that, because a great sports photographer knows the game. You have to be that Wayne Gretzky quote of you pass to where the puck's going. Like you have to, and I need to start, by the way, not having my entire life perspective based on hockey metaphors. I got to try to branch out. I'm not going to get out of sports metaphors. I'm just going to branch out to other games. But a great sports photographer can see the body language in the point guard coming down the basketball court on the 2-on-1, and they can tell when it goes into that, what may be a bounce pass position, but they're actually going to set up the alley-oop, and they'll get that shot of the dunk. Like the great sports photographers, whether you're shooting surfing or whether you're shooting beach volleyball or whatever, that would be fascinating to ask her as somebody, she's become a massive sports fan, never having played it, but is now photographing it, how that evolution works and how your mind works. I mean, what a neat feature that would be. You know what we should just do, basically, is just poach feature interviews out of our live chat every single day. So, Lisa, you're up next week, Tuesday, 9:30. Is that how we're going to do it? Some great conversations going on online. And I know you've been keeping an eye on it, Sarah, but there's people sharing their very own personal experiences, and it's been so great. Doug says, my daughter's 14. She plays soccer. There's a ton of opportunity for her. She plays on a club team. Plus, there's community soccer for those who don't make the club teams. Tracy says, when I was buying soccer equipment for our kids, the guy in the store said, it is expensive, but it's cheaper than bail. Which is a great, first of all, great sales pitch, and also true. Kim says, bless the visionary coaches who see the whole kid as a human and inspire them. They are like teachers, so valuable to a child. That coach and young athlete relationship is so special, can be so special. I don't know why my mind goes to like, this is the realist part of me as well. I don't even want to get into it. I'm thinking of just
I know exactly.
You know
where
exactly
you're going.
what I'm talking about. USA Gymnastics, Graham James, the Western Hockey League. As a parent, I'm not like, our little guy's 5, so we're not like quite. But I would imagine as a parent, you try so hard. I try to wrap my mind around everything from like trusting a coach with your precious child, all the way through to just even sport. To take it away from the horrific nature of sexual abuse and sexual exploitation and all that. Even just, someone said that 8-year-old boy that was approaching the girl about to drop into the half pipe saying, you sure you should be doing this? I would be that guy saying that to my son. You sure you should be doing this? Like Wyatt's fascinated when we watch hockey together. He's fascinated when they shed the mitts and when it's time to fight. And he says to me when he's brushing his teeth, he wants to watch YouTube videos. Can we watch hockey fights? And I'm like, should I be showing my 5-year-old kid hockey fights while he's brushing his teeth? Probably not.
Well, I kind of feel like, I mean, this is maybe a huge leap, but even just the use of a smartphone or a tablet, and like, when do you put those in kids' hands? And I think it's not about abstinence. It's not about like, no smartphone in your hand. It's about, how do you actually learn what this thing is, and what my relationship with it will be. So whether it's fighting in hockey or a smartphone, or being on the skateboard park, and is it appropriate for me to approach somebody that I don't know?
No, but I don't think it's ever appropriate for what that little guy did, that 8-year-old talking to the girl. I just mean as a parent trying to protect your own child. Like, if you watch the Leafs Habs game last night, but John Tavares, everyone's thoughts are with John Tavares, right? The captain of the Maple Leafs, one of Canada's great exports to the New York Islanders for many years, and now he's back home in Toronto, and he's just an excellent hockey player and a great community member. And last night, it was a clean hit. It was just an unfortunate situation. Corey Perry's shin pad to his it was bad. It was really bad. Really bad.
Footage,
and I can't even, and I'm not saying you treat your kids with kid gloves and you don't let them get involved in things. I've been watching the Laird Hamilton documentary over the past couple of nights, like the world's greatest all-time big wave surfer. And I just think, like, if you're Laird's mom or dad, are you like, should you really be towing into these things?
I feel like I hear a helicopter right now.
Is
there a helicopter in here?
But I don't want to be a helicopter. No, I'm aware of the reference. Trust me.
Just want to make sure.
But I'm not even parenting these days.
Tell me.
Back in the day, I mean, you want to hear like a real wild? This has nothing to do with sport. We're just rambling. It's Friday. We can do whatever we want. But grew up in Calgary. Our house backed onto a provincial park right in the middle of the city. It's a beautiful park called Fish Creek Park, and we would disappear. There's no cell phones. There's nothing. We would disappear for hours, and we would build forts, and we'd be around the provincial park, and we'd be learning about like all kinds of little things in the streams and the ponds and the climbing the trees, and it was so much fun. And then people can Google this if they want to learn more about Charles Ng. The name probably won't mean a lot to a lot of people. But Charles Ng was an American soldier who came up to Canada, and he's a serial killer. And he was ultimately arrested by like a mall security. I don't remember the story exactly. He was stealing some food out of the mall, and he was arrested by a security officer who I don't think really probably knew who they were dealing with at the time. And after Charles Ng was arrested, they determined that he had been camping out in Fish Creek Park, relatively close to, I mean, the older I get, the more dramatic the story gets. He was basically in our backyard. I mean, he wasn't, but he was close. I mean, ish. And I always remember that as I tell the story of being like, my buddies and I, in our little skateboard club, I think we'd be riding our BMX bikes down in Fish Creek, and I was always like, how close may we have been to Charles Ng? And you think these days, if that story got out and parents had found out that Charles Ng had been in Fish Creek Park, and you think any parents would let their kids go down to Fish Creek Park anymore, and you think that there'd be that unsupervised play, and I really wrestle with, and I acknowledge I'm taking the conversation away from where it's been, but I wrestle with as a parent, and maybe this is another perception of barrier in sport. I mean, we haven't talked about, barriers for disabled people in sport. We haven't talked about, there's a whole bunch of different barriers. I wonder if I may create barriers to my own child's involvement in sport based on my own, I don't say paranoia, but by being somewhat of a nervous Nelly. Mm-hmm. There's...
I just really feel like, what the doctor talked about, just talking about the fact that the benefits are so huge for sport. And I think in life, maybe I'm going to get too philosophical here, but there's always risk. Stepping out your front door, even in your house, there are risks. So, and I'm not meaning to downplay when there are predators in sport, because there are, but I feel like... I don't want to concentrate too much on that. I feel that, and I'm going to just say I'm biased because I grew up playing so many different sports, and every night of the week I played a different sport, and it really, I truly I've consumed a lot of the Kool-Aid that I really truly, I have lifelong friendships. I learned work ethic. I learned, perseverance. My parents would probably say stubbornness, just determination, dig in and go hard. But also teamwork. And it would be a shame if I missed out on that. I would feel that I would have suffered for not being able to participate in that.
And by the way, everyone's biased. Everyone has their own bias.
True.
Everyone has their own experience.
Their
experience shapes and forms their opinion. I, too, feel the same way about the value of sport. I bet you there's a whole bunch of people that are going to hear this podcast that did not grow up participating in sport and maybe don't see value in it, or maybe they found value in something else, like being a member of a band or being part of an artist group or whatever all those people do. Whatever all those people do. You know what I'm saying? I was always poor artistically. I was never good artistically. So
I was also a theater kid too. So
you were just good at everything. You're one of these annoying kids that was just good at everything, right? Sam, were you a guy involved in sports growing up? Was that a big part of your upbringing?
It was sports, big capital S sports was absolutely part of my upbringing. But I played very few organized ones. I played on baseball teams for a while when I was younger. I have a very weird relationship with minor hockey because it was always this exclusive club that I wasn't invited to. And that's not a slight against my parents. That's not a slight against my school. It's just I remember growing up, the boys who played hockey walked around like they owned the place, and they were sort of taught that at a young age that they're better than everyone. And I don't think that culture's gone away. And I think the other thing was just, I am a white middle class guy. My parents could have enrolled me in hockey if I was really interested in it, but it would have meant, we wouldn't have gone on ski trips or something like that, right? And I sort of think about it, and I'm just sort of like, there's immediately a class divide. There's an immediate, very apparent divide when you're a kid that these boys over here can play hockey and their parents dump money into them doing it, and that becomes their identity. They wear their jackets at school, and that started when they were like 6, 7 years old.
Yeah.
And then you'd get to gym class, and of course they'd be better than you at everything, and the hockey players would have their little club over here, and the rest of us would kind of fight for scraps.
Yeah.
So I think that there's absolutely tremendous benefit. I mean, when I hear about, like the Tiger Skate Club, like to me that is the crown jewel of what positive, inclusive introduction to sport at a young age should be. And I kind of feel sometimes like minor hockey is like the absolute opposite of that.
It's been neat for me I stepped on the minor hockey season was so decimated and so many other things, obviously. But in our family's personal experience, it was why it's first year. We're super excited. I was the assistant coach. And we're really, but it was really neat. It's really neat to see. I mean, these are 5-year-olds, but to see the makeup of which kids are participating, and they are all over the map in every context. And it was something that I was really excited about. Now, how long that goes, or how at what age that starts to change, I don't know. But it was just an interesting observation to make.
Yeah, I mean, my dad was the director of campus recreation at the U of A for 30 some years. And so it's really funny because I was, gunning for varsity, and I ended up being on a varsity team, and so did my sister.
What, at U of A?
Yeah.
What? Which one?
Track.
Really?
My sister was on the basketball team.
I was just about to stereotype you and ask if you were a high jumper. What did you do in track?
Triple jump and long jump.
Triple jump and long jump.
Yeah.
I love triple jump. I don't know why.
Triple jump is fascinating.
Okay.
Track,
but the point was my dad always said, the best end to anything, any sport, any game is a tie. Because everyone participated. It's just about, he's always about, it's about participation.
Do you think he actually believes that?
Yes, to his very core. He organized intramurals, and it's just about getting maximum number of people participating. And so that to me is like, to that point around the Tiger Skate Club, but it's about getting people involved and getting people participating. I mean, another point is, in high school and university, like, steer clear of the hockey players and the football players. Like, do not go those guys.
Well, there's a and then I'm going to be the guy that's going to go not all hockey players, right? I'm going to be the guy that goes not all football players, and then we're going to start this conversation. And hey, listen, if these conversations are going to happen in a fair manner, in an open-minded manner, they're going to happen on this forum. We're not afraid of these types of conversations. Brian says, Dr. Holt, who's on your panel, who is a legend, by the way, says Dr. Holt is right. The sport system needs to tie funding to larger societal goals like diversity, inclusion, equity, and then, says Brian, change will occur. Funding can drive change. I should probably read a couple of messages from our sponsors, considering we've gone about an hour with nothing. So let me show you this. From the Dairy Queens of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. This is another submission from a real talker. With apologies to those of you. Oh, Sam, that's fine. You know what? We'll save it for Monday. No, for Tuesday. We're off Monday. We're taking Monday off. Give me that photo.
I apologize, guys.
It's fine, Sam. You owe all of us ice cream now. That's fine. Sarah and I know.
I'm fine with that, yeah.
We're totally fine with that. So if you just quickly run out and grab a couple dilly bars for us, that'd be great. As a matter of fact, why don't you grab us $1.99 peanut butter parfaits? You know, the ones with that creamy soft serve and the rich hot fudge at the Dairy Queens of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. The 6 of them at Palisades, Nemeo, Newcastle, Westmount, Y Gardens, and Baseline Road. Are you telling me you already have it ready? Are you telling me you've already got the Samuel Brooks? Look at this. I should have worn my glasses because I've lost my monitor. I can't even tell what the username is here. Okay, let me put my glasses. Am I seriously this guy now? I got to put my glasses on so I can read. I've become this guy. All right. There you have it. Still can't read it. Sam, can you read that for me? Who's the handle?
Amisa 4444.
Amisa quadruple 4.
Got my Real Talk RJ peanut butter parfait complete with
real hot fudge. I just blew it. Real hot fudge. Rich
Come
hot.
on, man. Come on.
Sorry.
Get it together.
But maybe that's our customization. It's real talk. It's real. Rich, hot. Real hot fudge.
Yes.
Real hot fudge reminds me of the lady that spilled her McDonald's coffee in her lap, and then they don't call it real hot. It's not real hot. It's just the proper temperature. It's rich hot fudge. Dairy Queen has seriously had 11 minutes worth of advertising this week. We're going to invoice them double. We're just excited. Wouldn't you be if Dairy Queen was a partner? $1.99 peanut butter parfaits, as Brianna pointed out the other day, 2 for $4.20. Check him out this May long weekend. Also, a big shout out to Todd's Mechanical. Todd has been with us through the very beginning. He said, I like it. He said, what you guys are doing is just like what I did. He had his traditional, conventional career in oil and gas, wanted to spend more time with his family, wanted to write his own ticket, so to speak, and he decided that he was going to be Edmonton's best plumber. He wanted to be Edmonton's best source for plumbing and heating work, and that's exactly what he's become. Just read his Google reviews. Check out his Facebook reviews. Write this number down. Anytime you have an issue, you want the expert on site right away, an expert you can trust, one that has the stamp of approval from Real Talk. It's Todd's Mechanical at 780-499-7598. If you're in a panic and you have flooding happening at your house and this is happening in real time, check out RyanJesperson.com under the sponsors tab. You'll find Todd's Mechanical there as well. The team at Park Power, powering our hashtag Real Talk RJ, is offering you $70 off your first bill. If you bring your business over, residential, commercial, doesn't matter to them. Internet, electricity, natural gas, $70 off with the promo code 2021-Real Talk. And make sure you check out their Instagram with tips on how to improve the electrical safety in your own home. I love it. The team at Clean Air Club at cleanairclub.ca wants you to save money and breathe easy. It's as simple as logging onto their website, entering the size of furnace filter you need, and then you just wait. You don't wait long. The next day, oftentimes, they'll have furnace filter replacements on your front doorstep. You're going to pay less than you would in the big box store. Your family's going to breathe easy. You'll save money at cleanairclub.ca. We also want to give a big shout out to the team at Alta Moving and Storage. We know that this is the time of year that many of you are going to be changing locations, whether you're taking advantage of a hot real estate market and downsizing, whether it's time for your family to upsize, whether you're getting the heck out of Dodge. This is the company, Alberta owned, family owned, that prides itself on coming up with solutions that work for you. No more stress around the big 18-wheel moving van outside the front of it's idling in the street. You're not ready to go yet. You still need to have it cry in little Sally's first ever bedroom, but the movers need you to go. That's not how they do it at Alta Moving and Storage. Check them out online at altastorage.ca and you tell them Real Talk sent you. Our thanks to all of our sponsors. Now, we are going to be getting into trash talk in a little bit, but we've got a ton of other emails to get to as well. These don't qualify as rants and raves. These don't qualify as things that require the torqued up horsepower of our music bed and our collective rage. These are just bits of correspondence that you've shared with us, and we always want to make time for them. Appreciated this from Anna, who was in touch with the show, to talk at RyanJesperson.com. She says, after your conversation about white noise, that documentary about white supremacy and right-wing politics in the U.S. and elsewhere, Anna says, I downloaded the film with some trepidation as to what you were saying in your interview. It disturbed me a great deal, and it really is amazing to me that there are people out there actually saying these hateful things and believing them. Now, maybe I shouldn't be surprised, considering some of the things I've heard people here in my neck of the woods in central Alberta saying around these issues, but the intolerance of different people is striking. Anna says, I guess the most shocking thing was at the end of the film. I don't think this is really a spoiler alert, but she says none of really the three main characters that were profiled felt any responsibility for the views they were pushing from their positions of power. It didn't seem to occur to them at all that their views were empowering people and inspiring people to violence against those who are unlike them. Anna says, I'm left to shake my head and hope that these people disappear along with their views. I think she means out of the public eye. She says history will not be kind to these perspectives. That from Anna. I appreciated this from Edmonton City Councilor Bev Esslinger, who wrote into the show. She says, I listened to Real Talk, the podcast, on my daily walk. Thank you, Councilor. She says, I was really happy to hear you addressing a while back gender-based violence. And she said that you're probably going to get a lot of negative comments, so I wanted to add a positive one. You know, the councilor's referring to our panel a while back about domestic violence as a men's issue. And I had kind of predicted that I was going to hear from some people on that, right? Just based on 15 years of broadcast experience hosting those types of conversations. She said the show did a great job raising a very valuable issue. This is from a city councilor, okay? She says domestic violence rates in our city have increased through the pandemic, so talking about this issue is very timely. She says we're seeing numbers that suggest up to a 20% increase oftentimes week over week, and these are the ones that are reported. She says, I appreciate the team raising awareness of this issue and talking about the role that men play. It's often said it's not a women's problem, but a community problem. And addressing the attitudes of men and boys is so essential to changing the rates of gender-based violence. She said, your speakers were interesting, did a good job addressing the issue. It is only by speaking up and challenging attitudes that this will change. That from Councillor Bev Esslinger. We appreciate that. And I wanted to read this one from Kelsey. We were just having I don't know if casual is the right word. We were having a candid, impromptu, spontaneous, unscripted conversation. Let me be clear. Unscripted goes without saying on this show. I don't know what to. The only thing, if you make me nervous in life, people say, do you get nervous, like, working hockey games in front of 18,000 people? You get nervous hosting the New Year's Eve, show out of City Hall in front of 30,000 people? Never. Hand me a script and ask me to stick to it. I will be extremely nervous. But we were talking about jobs that oftentimes, and we're talking about PTSD, and this was during our conversations on Mental Health Awareness Week, and some of the implications, the mental health implications of certain career paths that people choose. And one of them that we noticed, we had talked about tow truck drivers that oftentimes are witness to some of the most devastating scenes you could possibly imagine, right? Volunteer firefighters, people were saying oftentimes these are the firefighters in the smaller communities that are called out. They have their day jobs and they're called out to these horrific highway crashes, without some of the supports that you might have in some of the bigger cities. Kelsey reached out to us and said, I used to be a victim services worker. I had talked about how I feel for police officers. I mean, I obviously feel for families, don't get me wrong. But police officers that have to do that notification, that have to go knock on the door, when somebody opens the door with that little bit of a confused look, like, why are the cops here? But then they don't realize that their entire life is about to collapse or at least change forever. So Kelsey says, I used to be a VS worker, victim services, and I work directly with the RCMP. And part of a victim services worker's job is going out with RCMP members to notify people of their loved one's death. The member would give the basic information and then leave. And it's VS, it's victim services, who remains with the individual as it sinks in. And as they realize all the questions they have, and as they experience all of their initial emotions. The most difficult aspect of the job is also very rewarding. To be that initial support in a person's most difficult and raw moments. It's a very interesting position to be in. It's during those moments that all egos, that all internal thought, that your own personal needs and judgments need to be completely set aside. Now, these individuals experiencing this loss, most of the time, do not remember our faces. They forget many of our words or our actions. They forget what we're wearing or anything about us. We were merely there for them in their moment of great need. These were always the absolutely most humbling and honest times. Now, the second visit with these individuals or these families, generally, I'd have to completely reintroduce myself. They may vaguely remember me, but only in very general terms. It may be morbid to say, says Kelsey, but I always felt honored to be part of those notifications. She says, thank you for the real conversations on this podcast. That from Kelsey. I thought that was pretty incredible. That meant a lot to have her share that with us. That's a job. That's a role that I have a tough time putting myself in. Being there for somebody at the very first moment where there's just, you're stunned, right? You're devastated.
I'd never considered that piece that she shared about that they don't even recognize you later on because they're just so taken aback. They're in shock. The whole myriad of emotions because everyone's, has their own response. That's Heavy.
It is heavy, and we're not afraid of heavy.
No.
And we're also not afraid to have a little fun. One of the things that I'm reminded of every single day is the diverse makeup of this audience, right? You saw it yesterday. Totally different scenario. A lot of people writing in about the Drew Barnes interview. They're like, great to see a conservative perspective. Really appreciate you reaching out to them. And then other people are going, what the sweet, it's not trash talk yet. Just wait.
Just wait.
But that's the whole idea. So whether we're talking about barriers to sport, or whether we're talking about domestic violence or taxing careers or mental health or the economy or crypto or whatever. I just about blew some of the surprises we have coming up next week. I don't know. That can be up to you whether or not we're going to tease those. But the makeup of this audience is pretty remarkable. And that's when I think that an audience really is growing to a point that's exciting, is when you can start talking about something and people come at it from an area of expertise and say, as a member of this community, let me explain to you a little bit more about what you were speculating about, right? Or what you teed up. And that's one of the really exciting things about what we're building here. And when I say we, I mean, I'm pointing at the screen. I'm talking to you that has this coming through your earbuds as you're walking your dog, Counselor Esslinger and everybody else that's listening to the show or on the road trip to wherever you're going on this May long weekend to get outside. Thank you for being a part of this community. We're also so grateful to our sponsors like Eden Landscaping. Sherry is just looking unbelievable in our studio. We do know her time with us in studio is coming to a close.
Yeah, don't get too attached, Ryan.
I've decided, no, I
do not.
Right from the...
She's mine.
I've actually kind of been cheering against her because I don't get to take her home. So water. That'll show everybody.
He doesn't do that, folks. He
I
doesn't
don't do
that.
The team at Eden's been coming up with solutions for people that are looking to turn dreams into reality for more than 20 years. You find evidence all over their website at landscapeedmonton.ca. They're problem solvers. Have you picked out a spot for Sherry in the yard yet? Or are you still consulting with the team on that?
I've got a couple, but I mean, I'm gonna need to.
You got a couple ideas?
Yeah, just throwing some things around right now.
How much longer do we get her? Like a week or something like that?
Something like that.
Something like a week. Sam, it's gonna be hard to say goodbye to Sherry.
It is going to be really hard to say goodbye to Sherry.
We're going to see that the camera 4 is going to be so much more wide open now. We're going to have to keep our desks a little more clean.
I might just snip a couple boughs off and hang them from the ceiling in front of Sherry just so we can have the effect.
Interesting.
No.
You're not.
You don't get to do any kind of pruning.
It would technically be
Sherry.
It would technically be the first harvest off of Sherry. Is
no.
Okay.
Hard no.
Eden Landscaping, I would imagine, would recommend against this type of activity. That's why you go to them, the expert voice at landscapeedmonton.ca. The team at Grand Dog Essentials, they're doing deliveries literally to doorsteps like Sarah's, like mine. Sarah's located at 16434.
Get out of town. Get right out of
Quality raw food. Quality raw food. Yuri reached out. An audience member, Yuri, reached out yesterday. He says, I catch it. He says, you know what I'd love to do is bring the team from Grand Dog on so they can. He's like, a lot of questions about raw food, and my dog's on kibble, and I don't know what's going on. And sure, but Yuri also knows that he can go to granddog.ca and talk one-on-one to a nutritionist that'll design a custom program. I know this because our dogs are eating different customized. Yeah, we're those people. But they've never looked so healthy, Moses and Monroe. At granddog.ca, if you use the promo code REALTALK, they're going to give you 10% off your first time order. The team at Power Ed wants to remind you that bettering yourself through online on-demand learning does not have to be a months-long exercise. So whether you're pursuing more knowledge, awareness, or certification on things like digital wellness or artificial intelligence or allyship and inclusion or digital transformation, also would be a great band name, by the way, Digital Transformation. You kidding me? The album could be called something like Segway. I don't know. Just freewheeling here. Power Ed has courses, including Digital Wellness 101, optimizing time and energy that can be completed in 2 or 3 hours. You can learn more about this. If you want to learn more about your own digital wellness or other areas of your life that could be improved, powered.ca is a great place to look. That, of course, through Athabasca University. And then there's the team at Local Waste. Do we need to remind you how much they love to talk trash? They love to talk trash so much so that they came up with this idea for a segment where everybody could blow off a little steam here on Real Talk. But they also talk trash through the week with their customers and their potential partners, people that are trying to figure out how they can streamline their spending and stop being taken advantage of by the big garbage guys. Local Waste is not going to try to squeeze every penny out of your business. They want to grow the relationship with you as your business grows. Mikkel and Lauren and Chris is who you're looking to talk to. You can find all the information online. Just look under the sponsors tab at ryanjesperson.com. Each and every Friday, the team at Local Waste also presents a little something we like to call Trash Talk. All right, I need a little sip of Java before I get on my way here because you've got me talking today. This is one where you're going to want the earmuffs. I'm talking like the whole segment. This is not designed for the 5-year-olds, my friends. Denise writes in and says, I would like to begin by talking about windshield wipers. Why are they designed in a way that makes it so complicated to figure out installation and replacement? Today, I cracked my windshield trying. Was she using like a crescent wrench? Denise, how did you crack it anyway? And she says, and by the way, while we're at it, would everybody please stop spitting on the stairs? She says, many of us are relying on the great outdoors and the beautiful river valleys for exercise, fresh air. Would you mind hawking your loogies into the bush? Nobody wants to slide or slip on your bubbled up, slimy pile of germs. Denise signs off. Have a hell of a great long weekend. Real talkers. That from Denise. I love that one. This one from Susan, who says, based on your past conversations on Real Talk, I do not support taxpayers covering daycare. I believe a parent is the best caretaker of their child. I see babies being dropped off at daycare 6:30 in the morning, picked up at 5, probably spending less than 3 hours with a living parent. Nobody in daycare will love the child like his or her parent would. It takes planning to have a child, including saving up for a house, maybe renting until the child's in school so that one parent can raise the child instead of institutionalizing them is a better plan. People who live in big expensive houses and drive new vehicles do not get my support. Sorry, not sorry. That from Susan. I'm sure everyone will agree with her and no one will be upset by what they just heard. Tyler says, well, there's been some really poignant points made by Mr. Jesperson. Well, thank you, Mr. Tyler. About the critique of the supposedly right and honorable Jason Kenney, Ryan made a very good point the other day about how challenging it is to be a leader during a pandemic. The people I'd like to mention, people in positions of authority, pastors, imams, school principals, doctors, business owners, foremen, teachers, the list is endless. All these people have worked so hard during the pandemic to keep the province going, they at least try to keep their shit together. Hey, Kenny, maybe you should too. Leadership is not just a nautical term for harbor masters everywhere, but actually making decisions for the good of the people. If you don't want to lead, kindly pass your magic 8-ball around, the one you use in caucus meetings that's guided your tire fire of government, and its wisdom will choose our next premier. Signed, a frustrated Tyler. What about this one from Denon? Denon says, I'm a licensed professional engineer currently working also toward my part-time MBA studies at the University of Alberta. I take pride in contributing to the local economy and driving business growth and innovation. Given the recent post-secondary budget cuts, it's become apparent the university is trying to cover the loss of funds by driving up the cost of tuition for targeted professional programs. The tuition hikes are absolutely outrageous in scale and are not consistently applied across the board. They target some programs more than others. It's unfair and it's politically driven. He goes on to say the tuition hike is financially devastating for many of us. It'll drive people away from studying for their MBAs. Can you imagine having to sit back and absorb an extra $9,600 a year? I was almost in tears after I read this. MBA students are equipping themselves with the skills to become entrepreneurs and business leaders of tomorrow. We would otherwise use this money to start new businesses, to stimulate a decimated provincial economy. Instead, we will be forced to drown in student debt even longer. This is ridiculous. That from Denon. How about this one from Alana, who says kids are going back to school on Tuesday. When we study stats, it's pretty clear. When kids and teachers stay home, numbers fall rapidly. Is the government really trying to tell us that closing schools and seeing a drop in cases is unrelated? Now, I know that this government doesn't think too highly about the intelligence of Albertans. I'll refer you to that the curriculum clusterfuck, but it actually hurts my heart to be losing faith and trust in the one beacon we had in Alberta. I am so disappointed. I am Alberta strong. We are Alberta strong. Jason Kenney and his government are an Alberta disappointment and Alberta disaster. That from Alana. And making his Real Talk debut today, it's Merrick, the red-headed prick. He says, Drew Barnes yesterday, more of that same bullshit talking point about wishing the world was the same when oil was $100 a barrel. It's fucking infuriating. Everybody wants to make Alberta great again. Unfortunately, there's amnesia when they bitch and whine about pipelines taking too long or Alberta not being treated fairly by the rest of the planet. 9 years Stephen Harper had as Prime Minister with Conservatives running Alberta. Where are the interprovincial pipelines? Stuck in court. The Conservative way didn't work. Why didn't Harper reform the electoral system? Why is it the current government's fault that Harper and Kenny didn't author something different? Comparing tax rates to Canada and the U.S. is the reason for Alberta's decline is laughable at best. To Drew's constituents that believe his gaslighting of cherry-picked half-truths, I have plenty of bridges and property on the moon for sale with your names on them. Big hugs. Happy May long to all at Real Talk from Merrick, the red-headed prick. And a happy May long from all of us here on the team as well. We wish you safety, play nice, play distant, and we'll see you back here live Tuesday morning, 8:30 Mountain Time. Until then, peace.